Okay, I'm at my job in Dallas on my lunch break. But I just want to share this experience I had and give it to you raw while it's still fresh. Because sometimes you have these thoughts and remember things, and then you don't think about them again until years later or months later or whatever. But I went to a ceremony. I've been to a few ayahuasca ceremonies, but oh my God, you definitely remember your first one. I mean, I do. I'm not gonna say this for everybody, but I didn't know what it was gonna be like. I didn't know the after effects. I had seen some podcast people talk about it, heard a little bit about it. I'm not really a research guy when it comes to spiritual stuff. For some reason, I'm very intuition driven, but it was something that I wanted to do, was calling to me. And then my guy contacted me out of the blue and invited me to a ceremony. And, I was very nervous, super nervous. Like, I'm sure everybody is crazy nervous. But when I got there, it was in his home. I met his kids were there. I felt super safe. That mellowed me out. So ceremony starts. It's a 3-cup ceremony. You take the first cup and you drink it, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, I'm in my cups. I'm thinking, I've done too many drugs in my life. Obviously, this stuff is not going to have an effect on me. I didn't do get my body cleansed enough going into it. So maybe I had messed something up. And I'm kind of just resigned to I'm just going to enjoy the atmosphere of, the singing of the ikras, singing. And, the vibe of everybody here trying to, do whatever we're trying to do. And so right about then he said there's different ways you can purge. You can have to poop. So he's like, don't trust a fart, because you'll think it's just a fart and you'll poop yourself. So don't trust a fart. If you feel you have to fart, go in the bathroom, use the bathroom. You could yawn, start yawning. That's a way of purging, let you know it's whatever. I'm yawning now because I'm tired. Ugh. And what's another purge? Yawning. And also throwing up, vomiting. So I'm just sitting there, just kind of listening and enjoying the vibe. Kind of disappointed that, nothing crazy happened. And then I feel like my stomach getting a little queasy. I'm like, yeah, because that medicine was not good. It was supposed to be the good honey-based medicine, but oh my God, there's worse, but I mean, I'm sure, but it's still it's not delicious. But I feel my stomach kind of turning, and I go grab my little bag, and you get a couple little dry heaves. I gave a couple of dry heaves, and then I just vomited up a little spit. And then when I opened my eyes, because it was just regular, I was just thinking nothing was happening. And then so I felt queasy, and then I was because every time I would I closed my eyes when I was throwing up, because the act of I guess gagging was just feeling good. It was actually feeling normally when you're throwing up, it's horrible. You know how that feels. I don't have to explain to you how throwing up feels. But when I was purging that, you know what I mean? I didn't throw up anything. It was just spit coming out because I didn't eat anything. I had an empty belly. But it felt good. As I was doing it, waves of good feelings were just that feels so good, coming on me. And every time I did it, and I just started smiling. But when I opened my eyes, the whole room looked different. I mean, everybody was there with their blankets and pads, and, my guy, the shaman, was there, and everything was still there. Same room, everything, doors, windows, but everything was glowing. It was I described it if everything was in a black light. Everything had glowing around it, had a glow to it. It just looked like everybody was in a black light. It was the weirdest looking colors I had ever seen, but to me it was so odd, because Just like I'm talking to you now, it's just like if you were speaking to me or listening to this and then you blinked, and then when you didn't blink, everything just looks different. I didn't like feel like high or out of my mind. I still felt the same way. It's just the world looked different. Like I had slipped into another dimension. And that's where I described it, like, oh, okay, I slipped into some kind of, adjacent dimension. So I'm just like right next to it. That's what I was just trying to explain it as, because everybody was still there. There was this guy meditating back and forth, he's cross-legged, going like this. And he just was just, the brightness around him was glowing in that weird, eerily blue, purplish glow. And I was just sitting there like looking around, because I remember thinking like this didn't work, and I blinked and I was like, okay. I remember that's exactly what I said. I said, okay, I see what this is. And I just started like, I was just smiling so big, because I went from thinking nothing was happening to like, oh my God, what is this? And then of course it just went crazier from there. I don't want to get into all the different visions I saw after that, but all that to say, I always remember like those colors that I saw the world in when I switched frequencies, my brain waves switched frequencies, and I just saw in a different color. I always remember that color, how seeing the world looked in that light spectrum. So about a month or so ago, I was riding with my son, my youngest son, and we were talking about bug vision, and he was explaining to me how bugs will see things in ultraviolet light spectrum. And I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. And I was like, because I'm always everybody, my sisters and me, at least, we're always, I feel like most people in our family, we're always very interested in everything. Ridiculous, we're so interested in everything, but I'm very interested in bugs and animals and trees and whatever. But he was saying ultraviolet light, so I looked it up. And when I looked up ultraviolet light, I was like, that's what I was seeing. I was like, oh my God, it was so like shocking to me. I was like, what the hell? So I was like, what is this ultraviolet light? He's like, well, that's because we're all a bunch of nerds. He's like, that's the light spectrum right next to this light spectrum we see in. I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. I was like, I didn't switch dimensions. I just kind of switched over light spectrums. So that it wasn't as magical, but it was still pretty cool. You know what I mean? It's still pretty damn, I don't know what it was, but it like explained it to me. It made sense. I was like, okay, I was just able to see in a different light spectrum. I was able to see in ultraviolet light spectrum. And he was like, well, I think like bugs can see it because they have another organ in their eyes or something to see in that spectrum, or yada, yada, yada. He was just guessing. But I was like, I don't know. Do you really know? He's like, I don't know, but it makes, logically, I think so. But clearly that's not the case. We can see it. I saw in ultraviolet light spectrum. And I do remember in that light spectrum that I was seeing in, and I'll share this because, I call them shadow people. I didn't know that everybody on the earth called them shadow people. I'm going to say phenomenon. To me, they're just entities, obviously, because I've seen them a lot. It's not a phenomenon to me, but I remember right after the ceremony, I saw them a lot. Even my youngest son, while I was having the ceremony, he was at work in a movie theater, and he said he saw this shadow thing move. And it was at the time I was doing the ceremony. He had never mentioned anything. He's like, it was the craziest freaking thing. He's like, Dad, I got freaked out. But, we don't need to get into all that, because I don't even know what that means, besides the fact that we're connected. But, yeah, anyway, when the guy, like I was telling you, this one guy, I can't remember his name for some reason, but when he was like, he was kind of rocking back and forth, not crisscross applesauce, but more like lotus with his legs crossed over, like he does yoga or something. He was just kind of smiling and rocking back and forth. But right behind him, I could see this shaped like a human, but like void, like a shadow. It was super dark. It wasn't a shadow in that light spectrum I was seeing. I could see him clearly, because normally with these shadow entities, you can only see him like in little glances here and there. Like you see, like, all right, you can kind of see him. Sometimes you see more of them, but there's very fleeting. This time he wasn't going nowhere. It was right there. And as he was rocking back and forth, the thing was sitting behind him, lotus style, rocking exactly with him. And I was just like, I wanted to tell him because I didn't know what it was, but I was like, I'm going to just keep my mouth shut because I don't want to say something and, everybody starts freaking out because I don't know what's going on. You have to remind you, this was my first ever ceremony. So I don't know what to expect, but, my shaman had, caution or told us, just whatever you see, don't fight it. It makes, whatever. He's like, just go with it. Things, just concentrate on it. No matter if it seems ominous or whatever, it's fine. So I was just trying to be cool. And yeah, I saw a lot. There was things that I saw in that spectrum that just makes me understand that there's a lot more going on around us in a more simple way than the magical way you hear in church or another dimension. I was like, no, it's just we can only see in so many light spectrums. Clearly we can see in more than one light spectrum under certain circumstances. But in certain spectrums, other things are happening that we just don't see. So I am interested to see if anybody else has an experience like that. But that was a big awakening for me. It was a big awakening for me when he told me about the whole bug vision thing and ultraviolet. And I looked it up and I saw that that's exactly what the world looked like when I was in that vision. I was even went outside and I was like, everything's in this weird, I'm going to just say ultraviolet light. When I was looking at the world in that light spectrum, and I can see things that obviously exist in that light spectrum. So yeah, I am interested to see if anybody else had an experience like that, because it was wild. And I've been back since, and I haven't had that same experience. Each time has been different, but I'm sure the last few times I went with somebody who was blocking my experience. I might have been blocking hers as well, but I was trying too hard to raise her vibrations, and it's not my place. I didn't understand that then, but I think it was blocking me from whatever I was supposed to be getting out of it. But yeah, I'm in a much better place now. So anyway, I am interested to see if anybody else has any experiences like that, because I do see certain paintings in ayahuasca. Like when you see ayahuasca paintings, sometimes they look like that, like they're painting in ultraviolet like colors. So clearly it's happened before. Clearly people see in that spectrum, because I did, and I'm seeing representations of that in the art. So it's common. Shadow people are common, because I was calling when at the end you'd share your experience, and I told them about, shadow people. Like, they're not good or bad, it's just what blah, blah, blah. Because to me, every time I've had experience with them, they're just watching. I had thought they were just some kind of other dimensional beings that were, can only interact and, whatever. But clearly, I don't know, maybe they're just around. They're just like around everywhere. You just have to be sensitive to them. But I think that's all I got. That's all I got.